Hello, my friends around the world. Peace out. Love and granola. No, I'm just joking. Here I am kicking back, getting ready to go to work. Actually, I have to be at work in about 45 minutes, so I'm going to make this video kind of short, even though this is going to be a part 1, part 2 thing, because this is a long discussion. So I've been an SGI member all my life, except, yeah, I could say all my life. That's a long subject because my mom started when I was 11 months old, and I still say I'm all my life because actually I was the reason why I came into the body that I came into to bring my mom to the SGI. But anyway, that's another conversation. The conversation of this video is the SGI a cult? Which I think is a total joke because actually SGI is an anti-cult. But first of all, we must define what a cult is, okay? So let's go to, now one thing that is a cult, this guy is definitely a cult. This guy is scary as hell. His name is Rick Allen Ross. He kidnaps kids, and he used to kidnap adults too. What he does is he believes anyone whose parents think their religion that the kids choose are different than their parents' religion, that they're somehow in a cult, and he kidnaps them, and he tries to do he calls reverse brainwashing, deprogramming. But he's been indicted for kidnapping. He's been indicted for he had to pay millions of dollars after kidnapping one kid who turned out not to be a kid because he was 18 years old. So he ended up having to pay millions of dollars to this kid for kidnapping him and trying to brainwash him, which he calls deprogramming. So that is a cult right there. But anyway, let's go to Cult Watch. This is a good one. Okay. Their definition of a cult. Okay. As a Christian-based organization, which Christianity was a cult, and we'll get into why all religions are cults. There's good and bad cults, just like there's good and bad witches on The Wizard of Oz. Okay. So, it says, as a Christian-based organization, otherwise known as a cult group, at Cult Watch, we have two main definitions of what a cult is. First, a group that uses manipulative, psychological, mind control techniques to recruit and control their members. These techniques might be love bombing, instant friends, or emotional blackmail. At extremes, it might include keeping people away from their friends and family and isolating them both physically and emotionally. Well, as I've been a member in many different countries of the Soka Gakkai, I've been to meetings in many different countries of the Soka Gakkai, and I've never experienced anything near what this is saying. SGI is the exact opposite. Anyone can come to our meetings, and if you'd like to come to a meeting, I'll be glad to connect you with anyone in any country who will take you to your neighborhood meeting. I bet in every neighborhood you live in, there's an SGI meeting, almost, in the world. At least 192 or more countries, there's a group in almost every neighborhood. Even if you think there's not one, there's probably one. Okay, so no, we are completely open. We don't want to take you away from your family. We want you to love your family more and care more about your family by getting rid of all your negative, we call the 3 poisons in Buddhism, greed, anger, and ignorance, so you can be a more loving, caring person and you can be connected with people. And we are actually the exact opposite of what this Cult Watch group says is the #1 definition. We do the exact opposite. We do community outreach programs. We even go to other religious groups and we do talks, and we allow those religious groups to do talks at our community centers. We call it part of, at least when I was in Orange County, I was a vice regional leader and an area leader at the time before Soka University opened up. We did that. We called it the, what was it called? Neighborhood, some kind of, I forget the name of it because that was a long time ago. That was over 11 years I've been in Japan and I can't remember half the English words I used to use. But anyways, it was a interfaith dialogue. That's what we called it, interfaith dialogue group. I went to a few mosques. I went to a few different centers. I went to Baha'i meetings, which are really cool because Baha'i has neighborhood meetings just like Soka Gakkai. They call them fireside chats, and I really love those because it was just like a discussion meeting in the SGI. There's no really leader. It's open dialogue between everybody. Of course, there's always some person that owns the house that kind of coordinates the meetings and kind of acts as MC in the meetings and tells us when we're going to end the meeting, when we're not going to end the meeting. That's kind of like the SGI too. Okay, so their number two definition. Let's go to that one. Okay. The second definition we use, which is the historical definition of a cult, which they're completely wrong on this. The historical definition of cult was Christianity, and other groups like Christianity at the time when they called it a cult, is any group which claims to be a Christian group yet teaches something that is not primarily a Christian belief. For example, a group that teaches that Jesus was an alien from another planet but claims to be a Christian. Okay, so I've never ever talked about Jesus at any Soka Gakkai meetings, so I guess the number two definition doesn't apply. But let me just go to a much more broader definition of what a cult is. This is one of the greatest books you'll ever read. It's called The Lectures on the Sutra. The Wisdom of the Lotus Sutra, sorry. The previous book was called The Lectures on the Sutra, which I was going to read some of. This is volume 5. I read all 5 volumes. I got them free on my Kindle. I downloaded in my Kindle. I found a PDF file of all 5. I read them all in book form back in the U.S. and when they were actually in the World Tribune at the time. I read them there too. But I really love this definition of a cult. Here is in the dialogue. So Ikeda, Daisaku Ikeda says, what is nationalism? And this is under the title, The Religion of Nationalism. So religion, your definition of a religion is probably not inclusive to nationalism because you don't understand the true definition of religion, and you probably don't understand the true definition of a cult because you would know all cultures are cults. So if you read the works of Shilton Pearce, what's his name? Joseph Shilton Pearce. He's written many, many books, and they're incredible books. And he says culture is the enemy of biological evolution. In all cultures, the reason what's called C-U-L-T, culture, is because they're cults. So this is talking about the cult of Japan, which the reason why Japanese people say this guy's a cult leader is because he's talking about the real cult, which is Japan. And I've lived here 11 years and I know Japan is a cult. So we'll get into that later on in probably another video. But anyway, this just talks about the cult of Japan. Okay, Ikeda says, what is nationalism? It is a way of thinking about the world that finds the worship of power at its roots. This is the exact opposite of the spirit of Bodhisattva never disparaging. So Bodhisattva never disparaging was from the Lotus Sutra. And what he did is everywhere he went, people said bad things to him or whatever they said to him. He said, I praise you because I know you're a Buddha. Whether you know it or not, I know you're a Buddha. So you can kick me, you can hit me, you can do it. And people would beat him and do everything with him because they were saying, like, what are you talking about? I'm a Buddha. There's only one Buddha. It's Shakyamuni or Siddhartha or whatever you want to call him, Gautama. You can call him anything, but if you don't realize that he's just you and you're just him, you're in a cult. Okay, because that's what a cult is. A cult is what puts one person above everyone else, and that's not what SGI does, because actually the oneness of mentor-disciple means we are equal to our mentors, and our mentors are many. Nichiren is one of them, Shakyamuni is one of them, Josei Toda is one of them, Daisaku Ikeda is one of them, Makaguchi is one of them, but we have many mentors. I'm one of them too. Hey, nice to meet you. I'll be your mentor. I'll be your mentor if you don't know how to mentor yourself. Okay, so Suda, the other person, he's one of the study department persons in Japan, one of the directors or whatever. Okay, he says, worship of power as the basis of nationalism. I never thought of it that way. And then Ikeda says, nationalism could be described as a cult of power. It is based on the perverse notion that the state comes before the people. Nationalism is a religion that has existed since ancient times. And Suda says, a religion? So he's just like totally blown away. What are you talking about? So this is how Daisaku Ikeda has dialogues. He always blows people's minds with one or few. Then they're like, wait a second. You're frying my brain. Can you restate that in a way I understand? And then he goes on and talk about it. I'm not going to go on and talk about all the things in this one because we're talking about whether SGI is a cult or not. And we're going to take apart that slowly, bit by bit, piece by piece. But what he says in this, if I can find the part, I thought I underlined it and I thought I would have it right there. Okay, I guess the universe is not wanting me to go straight to what I wanted to go to. Because I underlined it and highlighted it and it's not coming up right there. Oh, maybe it's up over here. Oh, here it is. Okay, so he goes on after he talks about the religion of nationalism and why Buddhism is the opposite of these kind of cult, putting one person above each other. So he said, I heard someone make the following argument. Fundamentally, doctors exist to serve patients. It is their effort to serve patients that makes them doctors. Yet, all too often, doctors arrogantly think themselves superior to their patients. Lawyers exist to help those facing legal troubles. Yet often lawyers become haughty, thinking themselves better than others. Politicians exist for the sake of the citizens. They are public servants. Yet politicians tend to grow insolent, supposing themselves above their constituents, whom they exploit. The role of journalists should be to protect the rights of the people. Yet the mass media is sometimes at the forefront in violating those rights. Clergy exist for the sake of the faithful. Yet it happens that priests think of themselves as higher, asserting superior over believers. So he's going to go on in this, and I thought I brought my water, but now every time I start talking, every time I'm going to say something that this reality is not ready for, it always tries to make me stop talking. So everything that is, times a Buddhazillion, I pock and pot it all. Okay. So after he goes on and says that nationalism is a religion, and he fully explains it, I'll go into that later if I want to read that whole section in my readings later, but that wasn't the point of this video. He goes on to show why Buddhism is the exact opposite of the cult of nationalism, the cult of religions. Okay, so he says, I think we can say that Nichiren Daishonin and Shakyamuni were revolutionaries of the most radical and fundamental kind. Can I say that again? Because I put up a YouTube video, 10 installments now, of the most revolutionary writings of Nichiren Daishonin, because he was a revolutionary of the most radical kind, and President Ikeda or Daisaku Ikeda is a revolutionary so much more radical than MLK and Gandhi. But the fact that one guy who was the founder of the Martin Luther King Chapel decided to put Martin Luther King, Gandhi, and Ikeda, which I think Ikeda is so much more revolutionary than these two. I would say Gandhi's on the lower tier, MLK is the next up, and Daisaku Ikeda is the next up as far as revolutionary and radical and just beyond anything you could have ever imagined. But anyway, we won't go into that in this video. When I read more of his stuff, I will. So he says, once again, I think we could say that Nichiren Daishonin and Shakyamuni were revolutionaries of the most radical and fundamental kind. My mom says I'm too radical, but I'm not anywhere near as radical as they were. Shakyamuni toppled the prevalent notion that people exist for the sake of the gods, teaching instead that the gods exist for the sake of the people. Okay, so although Buddhism is completely atheist, we don't believe in gods, what Shakyamuni did is he says, sure, you want to believe in gods? Because at the time, everyone was believing in gods because they were all in the religion, the cult of that culture, which is now called Hinduism, which believes there's many gods. He didn't believe that because he knew we were all gods. We were all infinite beings. So later, he became known as the teacher of men and gods because, okay, if I'm teaching you and you believe there's gods, well, I'll teach the gods too. He taught the gods too. So he took on every name of all the gods, and the main one, Shiva, who was one of the many titles that Shiva had, was the destroyer of worlds, and actually he took on that title as well. So Shakyamuni became the destroyer of worlds, and we'll talk about that in another video, but that's going off too far on a tangent. Okay, at the same time, he rejected the Brahmin caste, which arrogantly took advantage of people's faith and the caste system itself, proclaiming that all people are equal. Did you just hear that? All people are equal. That's what Daisaku Ikeda teaches. So there's no cult, one above anyone else in our organization. He put that assertion into practice. Okay, then he starts talking about why Nichiren is a revolutionary, the most radical kind. In later times, the adherents of Buddhism forgot Shakyamuni's spirit, and consequently Buddhism ceased to be a humanistic teaching. And why did they forget? Because they all started putting him on a pedestal. And as soon as you put someone on a pedestal, especially after they die, you're destroying anyone's connection to them. So anytime you think someone is above you, you're destroying, you're causing separation. There's no separation, because that's what Shakyamuni taught. He said, I made a vow to make all people equal to me with no distinctions. That means there's no separation. We're all equal. We're all oneness. Okay, so, but since they did this, this is why Nichiren was born. So consequently, Buddhism ceased to become ceased to be a humanitarian or humanistic teaching. It was then that Nichiren Daishonin appeared, declaring that all people don't exist for the sake of the Buddha, but rather the Buddha exists for the sake of the people. So anytime you put Buddha above you, then that's you existing for the sake of them, not the other way around. And Daisaku Ikeda teaches that he is here for our sake. We're not here for his sake. So we don't serve him, he serves us. And he teaches all leaders in the Soka Gakkai, no member serves the leaders serve the members. So I was a leader. First I was a group leader, I was a district leader, I was a chapter leader, I was a regional vice leader. In San Diego, I was the leader of all the Young Lions, which was about 200 young men. So every time I was a leader, because I followed Daisaku Ikeda's guidance, I was there to serve my members. I never expected them to serve me in any way. And that's what a true leader in Buddhist organizations do. And that's what he's going to say here. So since religion is the very foundation of society, a revolution in the realm of religion will rectify all of society's ills on a fundamental level. In any event, whatever our station in life, we need to be aware that arrogance strips us of our humanity. The more we think ourselves better than others, the less humanistic we become, and the lower our life condition falls. So you think you're going up when you put on a pedestal, but actually the higher you try to go on a pedestal, the more lower your life condition is. So it's just an upside down, topsy-turvy world, which he'll talk about later if I end up reading this whole thing here. But we're going back to the main thing I made this video, and I got to go to work now. A few more minutes. Okay, so I was asked the first time if SGI is a cult when I had the director of the Office of Americas come to speak at the Santa Ana Community Center when I was a vice regional leader and an area leader back before, in 1999, before Soka University opened up. And he asked me, is Soka Gakkai a cult? And I said, I'm sorry, I don't know what a cult is. And he said, well, a cult is when you put one person above everyone else. And the only thing I can think of is Jesus Christ. So I said, you mean like Jesus Christ? And he came later to speak at many community centers and the Soka University later after this incident, but he didn't do that for like 3 years after. What was his name? The director of the Office of Americas. He also runs a program on Pacifica Radio, Blaise Bompayne. I tried to get him to be the professor of religion or the professor of political science. He's a political science professor, actually. I tried to get him to be the political science professor, but it became someone else who we won't talk about because someone else got mad at me for talking about him on another video, even though I didn't name his name. But anyway, I won't get into that right now. So, he asked me that, and I said, no, that's crazy. But he wanted to have some kind of gratuity payment for coming all the way down from Los Angeles. And as a leader, we have no budget. I wasn't given any salary or anything like that. There are people that work for SGI as staff members. They have a budget to work within the staff, and they get paid a normal salary, like probably less than most people get paid at a regular job, and they work their ass off. But anyway, that's because it's their choice to work in that position, and they give back to the SGI because they love the SGI. But no one on the staff gets any money worth even mentioning. If you people say, oh, Daisaku Ikeda, he's a multi-billionaire businessman. He's never run a business before. Soka Gakkai is a C3 organization, so you can say that's a business, but he doesn't run the organization. He's the honorary president of the organization now because he's kind of in retirement. But anyway, he never ran it like a corporation. He is an author. He's the best-selling author in Japan, and now slowly becoming one of the best-selling authors in the world. His books are taught at so many universities around the world. So just his book sales alone, he would be a billionaire. But he doesn't. He uses that book sales money, and that's his own personal money, because these are his own personal written books, to start organizations. So he started Soka University mostly with his book sales money. He started the Peace Institution, Toda Peace Institution for the 21st century. He started about 20 other organizations with all of his book sales. So, and he lives in a very small house, and he's never home because he's always working. He's always going around the world. He's always traveling. He's always doing stuff. So, and he doesn't even own a car. He doesn't have a driver's license because he's, while he's in the back of the car, he's writing a speech for the next meeting, and he's having a dialogue with his wife or whoever's in the back seat, talking about what the agenda they're going to do on the meeting. So he's just like, he doesn't own anything. He doesn't have like these billionaires that he could have. He could have a private jet, but he doesn't have a private. He goes on the Shinkansen in Japan. He goes on all the regular flights. He stays at small hotels in Santa Monica when he comes to the World Peace Culture Festivals and stuff in LA. He doesn't at all, and he talks all about living, a frugal life to everyone he teaches. So anyways, there's nothing in the SGI that ever made it seem like a cult to me. I did watch, and I have the video of it. Someday I might put it up online just to do a commentary on it, because I thought it was a complete joke. Hard copy back in the late 90s, which I think was the greatest benefit to the Soka Gakkai, is it did the AKA cult 1 hour show on the hard copy. I don't think hard copy's around anymore. That's funny. You tell so many lies, you're going to be thrown off the air pretty soon. It was a total bullshit. I mean, it just turned everything we did upside down. Of course, it made us look at ourselves, which was a great thing, because at the time, Japanese members from Soka Gakkai in Japan were trying to teach people in America how to be good citizens. And their only idea of what to be a good citizen is how to be a Japanese. So they were teaching the cult of Japan, which we'll get into on another video, because Japan is a cult. Because it's a culture, and all cultures are cults. Read the works of who I just mentioned before. The last one I read was called Joseph Shilton Pearce. It was called, I forget what it was called. Something transcending the cult of your culture. I forget exactly what it was called. Anyway, I got to go to work now. It's 40 after. Okay, so that's all I'm going to cover. This might be a part 2 coming up. Why it's an insane question to say, why is SGI a cult? Because any one of you watching this video can go to an SGI meeting anywhere in the world, and I'll personally hook you up with anyone. You tell me. You put your message. I live in Topeka, Kansas. I don't even know if that's a place. I live in Puxtihootie. That's what my grandma used to call anywhere out in the boonies. Anyway, you live anywhere. You think it's far away from an SGI member, I can find, there's an SGI member right down the street probably from you, and it will be glad to drive you to a meeting. Okay, so that's why he got worried. I didn't have any money to pay him to come to this thing, so I said, okay, I called up the public relations coordinator of SGI USA, which I can't think of his name right now. And I asked him to go pick up Blaise Bompain at the Office of the Americas and bring him to the community center in Santa Ana and bring him back. So that's when he called me and asked if it's a cult, because he felt like, I don't know, he felt weird about that idea. But I was trying to tell him, we don't have a budget to pay for him coming here. We don't have a budget for him speaking at our community center, because all the SGI members and leaders are on an equal footing. We don't have a budget. They don't have a budget. So I personally was going to take him out to dinner or lunch after the talk. But anyway, we never even got that far, because he kept thinking we were a cult. But anyway, later he finally got over that thought and became really interested in speaking at many places, because he spoke at the Friendship Center in Los Angeles. He spoke at Soka University. And I think he spoke at a few other community centers after that. It was 2 or 3 years after I invited him in 1999. Okay, so that's part 1. We'll get back to this later on. Peace out. Okay, I haven't made a video in a long time in my bathrobe, but I'm getting ready to go to my Japanese class. I'm up earlier than normal. And I just took a shower. I'm going to get dressed in a moment, but I want my body to kind of dry off first. Okay, so this is the part 2 of, is SGI a cult? And the diagnosis of Icchantika Tourette's. You can always tell there was only 5,000 people during the preaching of the Lotus Sutra who walked out right before the secret expedient means was going to be preached. And you can always tell who those 5,000 people are, because there's only about 100 at a time that are reincarnated in any one country or place. And usually they all start grouping together. And so there's a bunch of we call them, or I call them SGI haters, fraught with lies websites and other ones who just, if you ever tell them anything says anything that reminds them of the SGI, they have this like Tourette syndrome. So if you say the SGI is black, they say wait, and if you say the SGI is good bad, if you say anything about President Ikeda or you Kozen Rufu or pretty much no, they're not yet Tourette's about Kozen Rufu. Some of them actually think that's a cool idea, but you can tell they walked out on the assembly in the eggs. That's Tourette syndrome that they have. So they think up is down and down is up, and you can have a conversation with them and they seem like normal people. So if you go like this, you say, "Oh, I'm walking down the street and I was talking to these guys and Daisaku Ikeda walked by and as soon you can say everything, they're like and as soon as like they hear Daisaku Ikeda, yeah, cold, cramp, they start having these like Tourette syndromes. So that's how you can tell they're in Icchantika. And anything you write in defense of yourself, if they lie to you on their websites, they're going to delete it, or they're going to say, "Oh, that's promotion of your cult," yeah! Like that. They start having these Tourette moments, so you can tell they're in Icchantika. That's the men of incorrigible disbelief, so you can't really reason with them about anything. So anyway, that I'm going to give you the true definition of cult created by the creators of the false Jesus teaching, which is called Christianity, which I talked a little bit about the guy who you're going to want to read his books, which is Joseph Shilton Pierce, because he actually used to be a Christian, and he calls himself a recovering Christian. And he says the antithesis of Christ's teachings is Christianity, so it should be called, this is his, I'm not saying this, it should be called the Antichrist. Christianity is the Antichrist to him. And he says everything that the Bible teaches, which is the antithesis of what Jesus taught, is pretty much taken out of context of everything he taught. And most of it is the teaching of the apostles, which actually after he died, they put him up on a pedestal, which is the quickest way to kill any founder of any religion. That's how the Theravada school, otherwise known as Hinayana, killed Shakyamuni. They put him up on a pedestal and they started worshiping him, even though he said everyone was equal. And so did Jesus. So if you ever want to put someone on a pedestal, you're going to pretty much kill them, because you create separation between you and him, which you don't realize you're him and he's you. So anyone who practices the true teachings of Christ, they know they are Christ. They are Christ consciousness. They are God living. They are the living manifestation of God consciousness, which is just full consciousness, which is the same as Buddhahood. So all the founders of the schools of religion were pretty much teaching the same thing, but their followers totally distorted that. So the only one that didn't get fully distorted is the Mahayana Buddhism, because the Theravada tried to totally distort it and put them up on a pedestal, and the Mahayana broke away from that, the school of the elders, because they were just totally doing the same thing that they did with Christ in Rome. So Christ taught amora. You take amora, which is love, and you turn it backwards and it becomes Roma. And that's became the seat of the Antichrist, which is the Catholic Church, which is the antithesis of Christianity. And all the deviations of that going on and on and on, were all the cults, whatever cult you want to call it. So the main definition of cult created by this Antichrist was any religion that was too small to be officially established by the government. So this is the definition of cult from at least the 300s in Rome and now around the world. Actually, no, it was about 200s, or 100 or 200, supposedly after Jesus was put on a cross and died, but we'll go into that another day. He didn't really die. He got got pulled down from the cross, and he was given, in the caves that he was supposed to be buried in, he was given some the herbs that were waiting for him, because they put him on some sleeping herbs when he got on the cross. So he was the first one that seemed to be dead. So they said, he's already dead, let's take him down. And they finally agreed, okay, yeah, you can take him down, he's dead. And they knew he wasn't, because they gave him the herbs. And here I'm once again, as soon as I'm about to say something that the universe isn't ready for, that's when my throat starts clogging up. So let me take another drink. Okay, so the definition of a cult, according to the Roman government, before they officially established Christianity as the cult of the Romans, they were burning Christians, the true Christians, not the ones that they created after they created their Bible, but the ones that were really trying to practice the teachings of Jesus Christ, which was turn the other cheek. It wasn't an eye for an eye, a tooth for a tooth. So the Christianity that they created and the history of the United States can be easily termed up in one definition. And this definition is genocide in the name of Jesus. So if you look at what the first conquistadors and all the people did in Latin America, they just exterminated the people in the name of Jesus to try to save them, in quotes, save them from living, so they can go to this false place called heaven, which actually Jesus taught was in your heart, and same thing Buddha taught. Okay, so why the SGI isn't a cult? This is the historical definition. The website that says it's what it was before is not at all what the definition of a cult is. So a cult is a religion that's too small to be officially recognized by the government. That's what the historical definition of a cult. So they called it the cult of Jesus, and then they called it the cult of Mary in other countries when it broke away, when the Roman Church was burning and killing and hanging and doing whatever they could to people that called themselves Christians, because they called it a cult. Until that cult started growing too big, so they figured, okay, what can we do? Well, we're going to have to hijack their teaching, which is what they did with MLK. All the people that say, I have a dream and all this stuff, and they changed it into, I have a drone. And they became drone murderers in the name of MLK. And all the people who took Gandhi's teaching and put him up on a pedestal and changed it into the antithesis of everything he taught are people that killed Gandhi and killed MLK. Okay, so they want to kill Daisaku Ikeda, and they've tried many times to kill him, but anyway, he's not yet willing to die. So you can only really die when you're willing to die. That you can try to kill someone as many times as you want, but unless they're willing to go, you're not going to kill them. If they're willing to claim, own, and acknowledge that they are the Buddhists from time without beginning, they're invincible, because as Daisaku Ikeda said, faith is to fear nothing. Okay, so why is the SGI not a cult then? Because in 192 countries, the SGI is now officially recognized by the governments in almost all the UN countries. 192. In the countries that is not yet recognized, only in those countries can it officially be called a cult, because a cult, by definition, is a group that's too small to be recognized yet by the government. That's what the historical definition of a cult, created by the creators of Christianity and the Bible. Okay, which is the antithesis of what everything Jesus taught. Now, there is many cults. One of them is these websites that are haters of SGI. Those are all cults, because they'll never get larger than 5,000, but they probably won't ever get larger than 100 people. And every one of those websites, they have this ticker mark in the beginning, which we got up to million, 5 billion, trillion. That they try to get the tickers, and there's only like 25 of them. So they go every day and they write another message, and they write another message, and then they click another message and another message. Every time they click another part of the website, it creates a new ticker, and they subconsciously must think once they get to a certain billion number, this lightning strike is going to hit Daisaku Ikeda and he's going to blow up or something. But it doesn't work that way, because no matter how many clickers they have on this imaginary site, popular site, which only 25 people actually write on and actually read, unless it's the people that are defending themselves like me, which they delete every post that I make, which is a defense of the lies that they're telling about me. And then that's a few more clicks on their clicker. Anyway, so they'll never get to more than 5,000 people. If all the Icchantikas that left the ceremony in the air all get born at the same time, which is highly unlikely, then they'll all go to these fraught with lies websites, and they'll all be 5,000, and they probably will never be more than a cult, because a cult still at 5,000 probably won't be recognized by any government unless it's like the king of Brunei or something. Anyway, so that's the real definition of a cult and why the SGI can't be a cult. And I'm going to get into other definitions of why a cult is, and tell you more about Icchantika Tourette's, if you already haven't figured it out, by trying to have a dialogue with these people, because you can say anything is up and they'll say it's down, and you can say anything is blue and they'll say it's orange, and they'll pretty much take the opposite of whatever you say, and they'll say that's the reason why they don't believe what you're saying and you're in a cult. Okay, so anyway, don't even bother, because there's no logic to their reasoning. There's just it's a syndrome, which I will call Icchantika Tourette's. So talk to you in the next video. Peace out.